Hi, this is Amy Lewis. This is Engineers Unplugged. Hi, this is Amy Lewis, and we're back with Engineers Unplugged. I've got Hans, and I've got Mike, and we're going to be talking about software-defined hype, because in this modern time, even the hype is software-defined. Let's find out what's going on here. So Mike's going to rock the mic.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. So throughout the last few years, all we keep hearing about is software-defined this, software-defined data centers, software-defined storage, software-defined networking. But how did we get here? How did we get here, Hans? What do you think?
Yeah. So everything has always been about hardware, right? Up until now. Now we're talking about software. Where do we come from? We started with tape and storage. We went to floppies. I hope everyone gets this. And then we have, do we have something in between? No, let's go.
Some really big disks.
Yeah, some really big hard disks. And now today we are in the era of flash, right? That's what we have.
Right.
What do we have other than storage and hardware?
So it wasn't just the storage was one part, but we've watched it in things like CPU, processing powers made a big difference. I mean, we had mainframes, single CPU. Then we go in and we get at least a dual socket. Then we go and we see quad cores. Remember, quad cores were the big thing like 10 years ago even. Then it kept growing. And now we got multiple cores, we got multiple sockets. It comes up, we could have 16 of these now. Just more and more CPU, and that CPU power is something that they haven't been able to keep up with. The CPU power gives us so many more options on what to do with. That's without even getting into things like memory, right?
Yeah, so we've had storage, we had CPU, there was another thing in hardware, and it was networking.
True, networking
so
even bigger.
Networking was from a very small pipe, and the pipe got bigger and bigger and bigger, and today, even if you want to, you could be up to 100 gigabit Ethernet. So what we have here is if we combine the end of storage hardware where we are, compute power where we are, and networking power where we are today, we no longer have bottlenecks. And that's why we are into software defined. So without bottlenecks, what can we do?
So without those bottlenecks, I mean, we've been able to do things. Virtualization has changed how we're able to do things. Now we've got things like software-defined storage coming out of it, because now the CPU and the memory aren't limiting us. The bandwidth's not limiting us. But the developers have to keep up with it. I think that was it. We were stuck. When we were back here on tape, and then even floppies, these sat for a while. The really big hard disks. I mean, we had huge hard disks for a while. That took us a while to get there. Sitting at 100 meg, the 100 switches. How many 100 switches did you have along the way? We've had those forever. We finally get to where we're at a point where we have all this hardware we can do something with. The developers have to get to a point where they can write to all of this. But some of that gets a little sloppy. So if you're able to get all the power you want, you don't have to be as specific on your developing and writing your code. How do you think that really impacts the market now?
Yeah. So one of the challenges will be, if you look at, there's no limitation. So programmers don't have to look at their codes like they used to do because they were limited by hardware. They had to make the code smaller. One of the challenges that I see is that still keeping that code good enough and better code, because if you don't look at how good your code has to be, because there's no limitations, you will get, again, finding limitations because you won't be able to scale your mistakes.
So what you're saying is right now where we've got code that we take this, we're good because we don't have these limitations over here. But without that software, now we're going to start hitting these stopping blocks all the way along here. And there's no way, at some point, you're going to get stuck. And that's where I think we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's why we weren't talking software defined 10 years ago. 10 years ago, software defined meant not, we were all using software, but we didn't know what that really meant because we didn't have that power. Now we're able to get there. At some point, we're going to have to see that transition back with hardware just taking off, you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very good conclusion, that hardware will always be important, whether or not it's commoditized, and you will hit that point again at one time that the hardware you will have to increase something again in hardware. We're not there today. We can do a lot more in software today than we can do with the hardware. And here's Amy.
So we're dealing with some serious engineering challenges here when I run the camera bounces. So just so you know, viewers, I'm flashing onto stage. This is really interesting, and I like your point about the development, and this is kind of tossing it back to the apps developer. So you're like, game on, we've got your hardware, you talk smack for years, we've got your back, now write clean code and don't get sloppy. So
It's all there. They just need to do something with it.
So you know what the challenge is going to be. So we've got to have an application, I want to see a really good, if you're a developer unicorn. Yeah, like a neat, no wasted effort, you can commentate.
Okay, Mike, you can have.
I think we got to start here.
Yes, you got a big body there. And there's the head and a big horn. Where are your legs? You need some legs.
I think it's the compute power.
Yes.
So this unicorn is crying tears. There you go. Really interesting. I like your perspective here. So appreciate this conversation. We're going to want to hear from you, viewers, because this has been a hot topic, and I like the way that Hans and Mike laid this out. So we're gonna throw this out on the blog and try to get some viewer responses, because I know I'd love to have you guys back on if we get some follow-up. So awesome. We'll see you next time on Engineers Unplugged.